Howdy everyone, Warstarsa here, and today we're going to be looking at a game that I've actually been excited for called RICO on the Nintendo Switch. Now if you've seen any of my previous videos on Nintendo, you'll know why, but if not, let me sum it up for you in just 6 words. First person shooter on Nintendo Switch. You don't hear that sentence often. Anyway, there's a lot to talk about, so let's get on with it. RICO is a first-person shooter where you take on the role of one of 4 police detectives of your choice and take down gangs in procedurally generated cases. These cases put you in randomly generated levels where you collect evidence, breach rooms, and eliminate enemies. In single player, since there is co-op, which I will briefly touch on in a bit, breaches will be in slow motion to allow you to pick off targets easier. You can breach in a door either by kicking it or sliding into the door. I'll take this time to mention that you start off with 1 reviver, which when your health reaches 0, you will enter bleed out where you'll be able to fire upon enemies until it is safe to use your reviver to get yourself back up. If you don't have a reviver, you will simply die. Moving on to game modes, at the menu you will see 3. There's the main game mode, case, which will generate a random case on the difficulty of your choosing, and you'll have 24 hours to complete it, with the time counting down in real time. I should mention that when you attempt the level in the case, your time is decreased, so time does elapse a little upon each level. If you die, the whole case is failed with an officer down, but you can abandon a level and try down a different path on the case file. Each level you complete earns you experience, which will go towards leveling you up. With each level up, you earn traits that can be applied to your character and boost stats and abilities. Next, there's Daily, which is a set of daily objectives you can play to win RP, which is used for unlocking skins for your guns. There are 3 difficulties: easy, medium, and hard, with there also being kill house and lockdown sub-modes. Each increased difficulty gives you more RP than the last. In daily mode, weapons in your loadout are randomly generated. Finally, we have quick mode, which lets you jump into operation with either a random case or a specific level ID. Training, which is just the training area where you can get target practice, and lockdown, which is a wave mode. Now, normally I'd talk about game modes and objectives together, but for this, due to the multiple different game modes and random objectives, I'm going to talk about them separately to make things easier. So for objectives, you have a few of them that can vary. One thing to note is that not all of them necessarily have to be completed to complete a case. Often you can just simply retrieve the evidence and leave, or you can go for all objectives to get extra merits in case mode. The first objective you typically have is to seize evidence that's located in briefcases throughout the map. Then you have the clear building, which means to breach each room and clear it of enemies. You also have the occasional bonus objective that will pop up to collect money, which is located in every mission regardless of the objective being active. Sometimes you'll have other objectives that will be added upon discovering them, such as destroying assets, defusing bombs on that floor, or taking down a target. Typically upon completing an objective such as defusing all bombs, destroying assets, or collecting all evidence, reinforcements will arrive and make their way to you to try to take you down. If you gather all evidence, you'll be given the objective to get out, which will have more frequent reinforcements show up until you leave. Now, as I mentioned before, there is co-op, both online and split screen, but I haven't been able to find any parties, and I don't have a Pro Controller on hand, so I can't show any co-op footage or talk through experience on that. However, as I did state before, in single player you can breach in slow motion automatically, but in multiplayer, both you and your partner must simultaneously breach in order to gain a slow motion breach. Besides that, there isn't much else to talk about other than the fact that when you go down, your partner can assist you and vice versa. Now let's move on to weapons. There are 12 guns, which I'll scroll through in the menu now. As you can see, there's a pretty fair variety, further customizable with skins. I personally have taken a liking to the Model 10. Guns are unlocked by purchasing them in case mode with the merits you earn, as is with their attachments and with grenades. Now, one thing to note is that when you open a new case, you will start with them locked again in case mode, but they will still be available outside of that. So give case mode a few runs and you should be able to unlock them all rather easily. Now let's talk about my review, because I have a lot to talk about. and not all of it is positive. For this reason, I'm going to do things a little differently than I usually do, and talk about the positives first and then the negatives. Starting off, it's not a bad looking game for Switch. I'll be honest, when I started up the game and saw Made with Unity, my expectations dropped. But it has a charming cartoony-like style to it, almost comparable to something like Borderlands, a game whose art style I've come to love. There's a satisfactory variation of guns with customizations and skins helping to further enhance your options. The use of random generation of levels helps provide fresher experiences with each play and allow for more replayability, especially giving you the ability to enter your own level IDs to generate. There's not too much else standing out that needs mentioning there, so let's finally talk about some of the flaws and issues. Starting off, the first time I played a level, I noticed frame rate issues in both docked and undocked mode. I noticed right away on the training level a lot of stuttering when looking at certain areas, but that's honestly the worst of it that I've noticed, and the rest of the game has been pretty stable for me. There's also the issue of a little bit of repetitiveness. Despite all levels being randomly generated, there have been a couple of times where I felt fatigued by doing the same thing over and over. Kicking a door down, killing the enemies, grabbing what's in there or defusing a bomb, moving to the next door, kicking it down, and repeating. It doesn't help that there's no music whatsoever during play, so honestly, it's a little sad. If there was at least some ambient sounds, if not an actual soundtrack to go with gameplay, it'd be a little better, but the lack of it just leaves an emptiness. Now, I'm not saying that this is a boring game because honestly, I've been having fun with it, but at times, especially during lengthier sessions, as I said before, it can get repetitive. I'm sure that if you can find a partner to play with, be it over split screen or online, that it'd help with that. Not to bring another game into this, but for example, let's look at Payday 2. Its heists have somewhat randomly generated elements in them, and it can get boring if you're playing repeatedly by yourself. But a lot of the joy in that is that the various players you will encounter will have different play styles, and that can help change the experience each time. In the end, I'll say this is a good FPS game. Flawed, but good. There's a good amount to do for the $20 price tag, but the fact that it's an indie shooter definitely shows. Still, it holds up a lot better than many other indie shooters I've come across. And again, with the limited variety of FPS games on the Switch, I'd say this is definitely a welcome addition. If the developers plan to add more content in the future, it'll only further solidify that spot as many of the other FPS games I've seen on the Switch tend to release and immediately drop support. Anyway, I hope this review has been helpful to you, and if you decided to give this game a try on the Switch or any of the other platforms it's available on, I hope you have a good time with it. I'd like to thank Thunderful Publishing and Rising Star Game for sending me a review key. This is War Sarcy on the Game Clips channel, and I'm out.